So I watched all 11 of Tyler Perry's Madea films.
We're sorry.
Typically when I have to review a film that is a sequel or a remake or it's based on another piece of popular media, if I have time in like my deadline cycle, I'll try to watch the earlier film or revisit it if I've seen it previously. You know, I try to do a little bit of my homework when it comes to watching new releases that build upon or are related to older releases. In this case, I, on a whim, sort of decided there wasn't anything else new coming out this week that I wanted to watch. And since I didn't want to watch anything, I may as well choose something that I didn't want to watch at all. In which case, it would be Tyler Perry's latest film, Madea Family Funeral. And I've seen other Madea films. I'm not new to the Tyler Perry verse. It's just that I'd never really sat down, except for a few cases, really sat down and watched them the way I would to review. You know, I've had them on in the background when they were on BET. So if I was going to watch what Tyler Perry himself has described as the final Madea movie, I figured I need to do my homework. I need to go through and understand this franchise. If this is going to be the Avengers Endgame of the Madea world, then if I'm going to understand it, I'm going to have any sort of emotional resonance with the material, I need to connect to it. I need to go back and start at the beginning and watch every one of these fucking movies. So I did. I watched all 10 previous Madea movies, including Meet the Browns, which is like only tangentially a Madea movie because she just has one small cameo and a car chase. I want to say it was like a horrible experience. I want to say that it like killed me. And oh my god, I watched 11 Madea movies, including the newest film, and I mean, it wasn't like fun, but it wasn't bad. It was interesting. The thing about Tyler Perry's films is that he tends to follow a pretty straightforward paradigm. The only reason that paradigm seems so strange and off-putting is that it's not how most people choose to tell stories. Tyler Perry's background as a storyteller is not like he didn't go to like film school. He wasn't someone who I think always wanted to be a dramatist. The plays that got him fame and notoriety in the first place are all, cobbled together from like multiple genres and moods and tones. And, there's a lot of like gospel church elements. There's soap operas. There are all these different things at once. And it's the kind of work only someone somewhat untrained in drama could produce. You know what I mean? Like anyone who like had read a book about like screenwriting or things like that would not do a lot of these things. And that's kind of what makes him special, is that he is a bit of an outsider and did things his own way and kind of learned as he went along. So even if you yourself might watch a Tyler Perry film and go, this is dumb, I hate it, it's really bad, there is something unique about it in that it's unabashedly him. It's unique, it's pure. When Diary of a Mad Black Woman came out like 15 years ago, I was working at a video store. I remember we got like 180 copies of it, and I couldn't fathom why, because I had no idea who the fuck this guy was. It didn't make sense to me that he was going to get like an entire full bay of the store. But motherfuckers checked out almost every copy. It was a hot property. So I watched it out of curiosity, and it messed my head up a little bit. I couldn't fathom that someone had made a movie that was like a revenge thriller and also a soap opera and also like a family comedy, but also like sort of almost like a John Cassavetes movie about like a woman in trouble and stuff. Like there's just so many things happening in that movie, and there's no care whatsoever for tastefully transitioning between the moods and tones. It's just all one big messy thing. And it's off-putting, but it's also impressive. And honestly, it's bold. It's bold in a way that a lot of modern filmmakers just aren't. I mean, maybe you don't personally like Tyler Perry. Maybe you think he's a new age minstrel or something. I mean, there's plenty of reasons not to like Tyler Perry. I'm not going to pretend the man's a saint or something. As Werner Herzog says, you must not avert your gaze. You have to pay attention to things like this that are popular because it tells you a lot about modern culture. These are the films people are seeing in droves. There's got to be some kind of reason for it. And what's interesting about the Madeaverse is that this isn't like the Marvel universe where there's like crazy insane amounts of marketing money and toys and tie-ins and things like that, and huge budget spectacle. This is like These movies don't cost a lot. Lionsgate releases them with, what I would consider probably like moderate marketing budgets. And, Tyler Perry's done this all sort of off the strength of his brand. 15 years ago, the guy had never made a movie, and now he's worth nearly $1 billion. So what did I learn from watching 10 Madea movies in a couple of days span of time? Well, one, I learned that I am a masochist, and that I'll do anything if it involves watching tons of movies. I also learned that the basics of the Tyler Perry paradigm that I'd come to learn from when I'd seen Diary of a Mad Black Woman and also watched later films and pieces on television is it changes over time. The original basic Tyler Perry movie concept, there's generally a female protagonist. She's generally down on her luck in some fashion, or she has some sort of like opaque character flaw that you can trace back to fucked up childhood trauma that's usually revealed sometime in the late second act. There's usually two men in her lives. A man who's already been in her life and is just a terrible, scummy, horrible, abusive, just like cartoonishly villainous, awful person. And then there's a new man she meets typically who's like the polar opposite, who's actually so nice and loving and God-fearing that it's uncomfortable. Like it's like these weird polar opposite devil angel things that just people are not like obviously there are people who are really good and there are people who are really bad, but in the sense of watching a film, it's off-putting to see people at such extremes. It's uncomfortable. And typically she can't choose between the two men. Obviously the audience is screaming at her to leave the terrible man, but she, because of her trauma, doesn't know how. And then they want her to go along with the new great, God-loving man, but that guy seems weird based on the way she's perceived the world. And there's like, a bit of a back and forth. And there's usually a ton of peripheral family characters who each have their own little mini dramas. And they're typically wound up in other pieces of trauma. And then Madea is usually there. Madea is Tyler Perry's sort of titular character who is just Tyler Perry in a dress. That's the gist. It's him being sort of a caricature of a character he claims is sort of based on his own mother and some of his aunts. And there is elements of the Madea persona that are uncomfortable. It's weird how many black male comedians have had to get popular by cross-dressing awkwardly. Not like in a cool, like, drag way, just in this weird mammy stereotype kind of way. But, if you watch enough Madea movies, the character is relatively consistent. And there's an ideal way Madea should be used in the narrative. Realistically, Madea is supposed to sort of be like outside of the core story of the film. Madea is supposed to kind of represent the audience's collective desires and what the audience would want to do or want to happen if they had control over the narrative, right? So in Diary of a Mad Black Woman, when the main character finds out that her husband's been cheating on her and is throwing her out with no money and stuff and like no alimony, you the audience are like, that's not fair, that's fucked up. I wish someone would show up and like cut his lamps in half with a chainsaw. And then Madea shows up and like does that. She's less like a real person and more like a mystical spirit that the audience can control with their collective desires. So movies that fit that partial paradigm where Madea is on the periphery of the film and shows up to give people like homespun advice and tell weird anecdotes and, be vaguely offensive, those are the Madea movies that work the best, where there's like a core kind of fucked up family drama and like a lot of weird shit to unpack, and then Madea sort of helps these people along the way and teaches them how to like stand up for themselves or grow. And then like because Medea's like hijinks are never quite enough, then like there's a heavy church musical element. Typically as a writer, you're supposed to put your characters in like bad positions and then have to write your way out of it. Like they have to learn things. You put them in uncomfortable spaces so they have to confront things about themselves and grow and change, and that, you get to some kind of catharsis, and then that's dramatically satisfying for an audience. Tyler Perry tends to put his characters into such like really uncomfortable positions, and he tends to unearth such really like dark, fucked up stuff that a normal movie climax would never resolve that. Like, by the time everything is laid on the table in a Tyler Perry movie, you're like, well, fuck, how are these people going to overcome this? I mean, this family's been run, asunder. Like, what are we going to do? And then usually something way over the top happens. Like, the Deus Ex Machina factor here is off the charts. In one of the films, Maya Angelou shows up at a family reunion and gives a big, like, poetic speech. In another one, like, Gladys Knight just starts singing a song about the main character's, like, personal plights, you know? It always has to be, like, a really big, bold thing, because what the fuck else is going to resolve these weird things he's done? He pushes himself, like, entirely too far in the first and second act, and then for the third act, he's just like, well, take it to church. And it works. It works every time. It shouldn't. Another filmmaker probably couldn't get away with this, but it's the specific way in which he employs these tricks, if you could call them that, you know, it creates a brand, and people seem to like that. The issue is that over the last several years, as Tyler Perry's become more prolific, he's not just making Madea movies. He has tons of films that exist outside of the Madeaverse proper. He's, like, grown unsure of what to do with the Madea character. Like, what do you do with this? He's done tons of plays with Madea. Madea's been on television shows, has had cameos in other films, has had an animated movie, tie-in books. You know, it's the core character that people expect to see when they see Tyler Perry's name, but he can't always shoehorn her into a story. In the early 2010s, he drifted away from the actual, like, black film paradigm he created. You know, these films that are rooted in exploring the black family unit in America and, like, what type of things bind them and tear them apart. And he just started moving into putting Madea into, like, weird scenarios. For instance, Madea's Witness Protection is ostensibly a movie about the '08 financial crisis and, you know, executives who were found to be in, like, Ponzi schemes and stuff with Eugene Levy. It's like a Eugene Levy movie, basically, that happens to have Madea in it. Madea Christmas, which is basically just like a Hallmark Christmas movie that Madea is a very, very peripheral character on. It features, like, a multicultural cast and all these other elements that don't feel like Tyler Perry, except for the scene in that film where Tyler Perry and Larry the Cable Guy are lecturing a young man on how to milk a cow. That's very Tyler Perry. He just moves further and further away from, in my opinion, what actually works. Then, most recently, in the very successful Boo, a Madea Halloween, and Boo 2, another Madea Halloween, I guess, he completely abdicates what he's good at and just starts doing just random shtick, essentially. He introduces new characters that become, like, Medea's, like, you know, supporting cast, basically. Tyler Perry plays several characters in the films. He plays Madea. Obviously, he also plays Joe, Medea's brother, and then he plays Brian, who is Joe's son. And Brian is just Tyler Perry in no makeup or garb, just sort of the straight man. He's an attorney. Later on in the films, he becomes a prosecutor. And he's sort of supposed to be the audience's, like, regular, reliable, logical guy. The guy who's like, hey, y'all, don't do that. Like, he's a pretty fair character. But by the time we get to the Boo films, Brian, his entire demeanor is different. He becomes, like, this just insipid, weirdo, loser person. And then Joe becomes, like, far more malicious and, like, a meaner, kind of fucked up uncle type. Madea stays pretty much the same throughout all these films. But then the Boo films are, like, barely Halloween movies. They're just, like, shitty teen comedies that Tyler Perry wrote and casted exclusively with young stars from, like, YouTube and Vine. It's not normal. The movies don't work. It's very uncomfortable, and I get why they were successful. People probably thought they were going to go see Tyler Perry fight the Wolfman, which would have been way cooler, and instead they got this whatever the hell. So it makes perfect sense that Madea needed to come to an end. That Tyler Perry would announce to the world that he was only going to make one more Madea movie, and then he was going to put her out to pasture. Not kill her, but take a break from the character for a very long time until such a time passes that he feels he has something new to say in the world of Madea, I guess. Which is why I was curious about a Madea family funeral. To me, I thought, okay, this is going to be like the death of Madea. Like, Medea's probably going to die, and then, like, all these characters are going to come out of the woodwork from all the other films, because all these films are connected. And over the years, a ton of huge stars have been in these films from before they really popped off. You had Taraji P. Henson, you had Viola Davis, you had Mary J. Blige. You know, I mean, she was a star before, but in terms of her acting career. You had all these different people. I mean, you know, you could bring Shamar Moore and his cornrow wig back. There's a ton of stars you could have all, you know, like, all come back together for, like, one big funeral movie. And maybe Madea would die, and then everyone would tell old stories about Madea, and you could do kind of like a clip show format thing of flashbacks and stuff, and little. It could be really cool. That's not what a Madea family funeral is, though, like, at all. A Madea family funeral doesn't include anyone from the old movies. There are no fun callbacks, no checking in on old characters or anything like that. That's just no. Also, Madea doesn't die at all. I assumed it would be loosely based on one of the final Madea plays where Madea does die by falling off of the stage. It's not that at all. It is literally just a new movie that features Madea in it. There is no finality, no sense of a franchise coming to a close, no reflection on the earlier films, nothing. Essentially, I watched 10 Madea movies for nothing. A Madea Family Funeral is actually like two movies that don't belong together, awkwardly interacting for the entire runtime. What happens in a Madea Family Funeral is that Madea and Brian and Joe and some of the newer characters are all going to visit a different side of Medea's family. We've seen like 12 sides of Medea's family. This is sort of like the Bouger side that lives in a different part of Georgia. And they're going for like a big anniversary party, and they're going to see Madea and Joe's other brother, Heathrow's side of the family. Heathrow is a newer character that Tyler Perry chose to play in this film, who looks kind of like Common, if Common had a mullet and no legs and talked with one of those talk box things. It really does feel like Tyler Perry was bored of playing Madea and Joe and wanted a new thing to do, and just made a character that was as sexually disturbing as Joe, but weirder and talk with a talk box. He serves no actual thematic, plot, anything important. It's just another Tyler Perry character. Something to keep him engaged, I guess, because he's kind of checked out from the material. And we meet Heathrow's side of the family, which are all nice, well-intentioned people. They're all, pretty and stuff. But it doesn't feel like the kind of lived-in families we've come to experience as supporting characters in other Madea movies. Here, this family seems like purposefully fake. There's just a slick appearance to them. They're all like very pretty, and it's hard to put into words, but this side of the film feels kind of like a telenovela almost. Like everyone's a little bit too pretty. His films have always had soap operatic, tropes and aesthetics, but here it's like, this seems like a show, like a different show that Tyler Perry had nothing to do with, that then the core Tyler Perry cast is like crashing on. As with most Tyler Perry movies, there's a lot of like extra fat. Like almost every Tyler Perry movie could have 10 to 15 minutes cut from it and immediately become 40% better film. There's just a lot of like gags run too long, improvisation isn't snipped into the good parts. It's just, there's a lot of meat, a lot of fat on the bone. This film, for instance, has a really long sequence where Madea and Brian and Joe and everybody gets pulled over in a car by a police officer, and it's supposed to be like a funny yuck 'em up about how cops shoot unarmed black people, and it's not really funny, and it lasts like 6 minutes, and it doesn't have any bearing on the rest of the plot, and it goes nowhere. It's just like a bit that they thought would be funny and then didn't trim down to being funny. It just lays it all out there. And the longer it lasts, the more uncomfortable it is, because you start to wonder if like they're gonna die. Because the movie is called a Madea Family Funeral, so someone has to die. It really made you think that like, are they gonna? Is his final movie really gonna have like an uncomfortable Black Lives Matter element? But no, that require him to have scruples. The issue is that Medea's side of the movie is the same broad humor and like physical comedy and stuff that we've come to expect from the other Madea heavy films, but the soap opera side with Heathrow's family is like needlessly convoluted. It's very much like an old school farce. Like I said, there's a theatrical element to all these films because they started out in plays, and all the films have characters with like secret histories and stuff, or this person's really this person's son and stuff like that. And none of those films is this type of material done quite this way. There's only one other movie I can compare it to, and when I say it, you're going to think I'm like exaggerating, but the soap opera serious side of this movie literally plays out like Tommy Wiseau's The Room. I'm not joking. There's actually a scene late in the third act where a bunch of major revelations are played out, and it's literally the scene in The Room where like Tommy's like yelling about how everybody betrayed him. I mean, like the camera work, like the bad score, the staging. Like, if I didn't know any better, I think Tyler Perry did it on purpose. I don't think he really did, but maybe. You have to watch this like really, really, really bad soap opera unfold involving the father of this family dying, while cheating on his wife, and then everyone's trying to keep it from the wife that the father cheated, and then the son that finds out was cheating on his wife or his girlfriend with someone. Like, there's all these like concentric circles of infidelity and stuff, and generational trauma that's passed down. Obviously, that's a big Tyler Perry hallmark. And meanwhile, Madea and Brian and Joe and the whole gang are there the whole time, just like wholesale commenting on it while it's happening. This isn't the usual thing where Madea is like the audience voice interacting and engaging in like a drama. It really does feel like a whole Madea movie invading this other like shittier movie and actually making it funnier by joining them together. Like, it's not a good movie. I don't know if I'd even rank it in my top 5 Tyler Perry movies, to be entirely honest. But it's funnier than most of them. I'm not going to lie. There were a lot of really good laugh out loud moments just by virtue of the juxtaposition between the way Tyler Perry plays the Madea adjacent characters to the way these younger performers and stuff who are all like, I don't know, maybe they're like background players from Power. I don't know. I didn't recognize any of them except David Otunga. Like, they're all playing everything incredibly straight, almost like a bad porno, kind of. And then Tyler Perry and them are just, like, mocking them, like, ceaselessly. And just the engagements back and forth are just really funny. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I laughed. I had a really good time. It's just that it runs out of steam pretty quick, and then it kind of hobbles along to its conclusion where all the characters find out all the bad things. And then, like, the mother of the family gives this, like, really huge speech about her entire life. And it's, like, a little glimmer of the old Madea format where, like, you know, typically a woman comes forward and tells you all of the horrible things she's had to endure to get to where she is. And then everyone has to, like, unpack it together. And then there's, like, a song in a church, usually. But that doesn't happen. There's no song. They don't go to church. I mean, there's an extended funeral sequence in the church. But at the end, they don't go back to church like usual. And nothing is really resolved. Everyone's just left to kind of fucking deal with this shitty stuff. And then a couple of the characters have to kind of have a come to Jesus with one another about where they're going to go in their lives. And Tyler Perry and Madea is there for that and intervenes and gives them a bunch of advice, kind of like an extended episode of Iyanla Vanzant's Fix My Life. But it doesn't settle. It just, everyone kind of leaves the house with all this fucked up issues. And then Madea and all of them go home. And then they roll credits. And then there's outtakes. Yeah. It just feels like an unfinished film, which is not what I expected from, you know, the end of the Madea franchise. I expected like a big, extravagant, you know, going away present for this character and all the years that we've spent with her and her cohorts. And that's just not what happened. Basically, I watched hours upon hours of Madea films for no fucking reason. I could have watched this blind and totally gotten it and made like a 5-minute video and been healthier. Like, I've cut out a lot of coughs from this. I think I woke up sick today. I think Madea made me sick. Should you guys go see it? Probably not. If it comes on BT in 6 months, should you watch it? Also, probably not. But I mean, who cares? Maybe. I just don't know what Tyler Perry is going to do now. I mean, is he going to expand his horizons? Is he going to make science fiction films, westerns? You know, is he going to make time travel movies? Or is he going to make a couple more sad, weird family dramas and then in 5 or 6 years do like a Madea reboot? You know, maybe he'll cast someone else to do Madea so he doesn't have to be in the dress anymore. Who knows? Personally, I would love the opportunity to write and direct a Madea prequel film that doesn't involve Tyler Perry in the dress, because I sat and I did a lot of research about this character, watching all these movies, and there's tons of interesting pockets in Medea's fictional biography I would love to fill in myself. So that's it for this week. Thank you guys for sitting and sharing in this shared trauma we have of now having watched 11 Madea films. I'm considering going back and watching every other Tyler Perry movie too, all the non-Madea ones, and maybe doing a sequel video of sorts, but I don't know if I'm ready to go back into that trench right now. That's it for us. Thank you, everybody, and have a great week.